He lived in India 2,500 years ago. Echoes of his world still remain. The Buddha, the Indian sage whose story inspired one of the world's great religions, Buddhism, the fourth largest religion in the world. He was the son of a king, a pampered prince who abandoned a life of pleasure to seek enlightenment.
Even Buddha himself, in order to get final enlightenment, need hard work.
It was an arduous spiritual journey.
He was eating 1 grain of rice per day. He was standing on 1 foot. He was sleeping on nails.
Meditating under the Bodhi tree, he attained the supreme wisdom.
There is no knowledge won without sacrifice. In order to gain anything, you must first lose everything.
Next, the Buddha. For weeks, the Buddha remained near the Bodhi tree, peaceful and serene. He was tempted to retire into a profound solitude, instead of trying to teach others what it had taken him 6 long years to discover for himself.
He wants to stay there. He's very happy. He doesn't want to go out. He says to himself, no one is going to understand this. You know, people are going to think I'm crazy. They're going to think I'm nuts.
Buddha saw the nature of the people. Envy and jealousy and strong negative mental states. All the people in the world, they are like the fishes wriggling in the very shallow water. So Buddha, he himself, afraid to teach the people.
The myth is that a god comes to the Buddha. Brahma comes on his knees and says, please, we need you. Why don't you try talking about what you just understood? Because the world needs it. The gods need it and the men need it, you know? People need it.
And then Buddha decided to give his teachings. Because of the great compassion, it's not an ordinary compassion.
When you feel the feelings of others, you automatically don't want them to feel bad. You feel the feeling of your hand, you don't put it in the oven. I mean, you're not being compassionate to your hand, you just feel the pain, so you don't want to put it there. So you feel others' pain, you're going to do your best to help them alleviate it.
When somebody becomes enlightened, something blooms in his heart. It's like a flower blooms and it cannot hold the fragrance. It has to naturally release. So it's like he naturally had to release his radiance. He has to share this joy that was in his heart.
35 years old, the Buddha would devote the rest of his life to bringing his teachings, the Dharma, the fundamental laws of all things, into the world.
Buddhists don't have a creation story. There is no creator deity. It's not really of interest. It's not an issue. What's of interest is the problem of human suffering and the solution to human suffering. Pretty much everything else, right, is beside the point.
The Buddha's analysis of suffering came in the form of what have come to be called the Four Noble Truths.
There is no commandments or anything. The first noble truth is that there is suffering in this world. Generally, this suffering has been mistranslated.
Suffering is not entirely accurate to the word that the Buddha probably used. It means something closer to dissatisfaction, that, you know, we're never quite happy, and if we are, that's gone in an instant anyhow.
And he says that this suffering, this unsatisfactoriness, doesn't arise by itself. It has causes, Our own mind causes it.
While the second noble truth asserts that suffering has a cause, the third noble truth makes an astonishing claim.
You really can be free of suffering by understanding the cause of suffering. Nobody tells you that. And so that was a huge announcement.
The problem, Buddha taught, is desire. How to live with the confused and entangling desires of our own minds.
People often misunderstand Buddhism as saying, in order to wipe out suffering, you have to wipe out desire. If that was what the Buddha was saying, then where does the desire for enlightenment fit in? You know, the Buddha is saying, be smart about your desires.
Desire must be there. Without desire, how can lead our life? Without desire, how can achieve Buddhahood? Strong desire to become Buddha. But desire to harmful, that bad.
With the fourth and final noble truth, the Buddha laid out a series of instructions for his disciples to follow, a way of leading the mind to enlightenment called the Noble Eightfold Path, the cultivation of moral discipline, mindfulness, and wisdom.
They are, as I like to think of them, a set of possible recipes that you can try on your own life and see which one makes the best soup.
Bliss, nirvana, the Buddha taught, could be found in the fleeting moment through the practice of meditation. The Buddha showed his followers how to come to terms with their own roiling thoughts and desires by paying attention to them, by becoming aware, becoming mindful. As an ancient poem counsels, like an archer, an arrow, the wise man steadies his trembling mind, a fickle and restless weapon.
Many times our mind is not peaceful enough. So we realize that perhaps we need to understand more about mind itself and how to balance the emotions, how to balance our mind and try to cultivate more happiness.
Every sentient being, even insect, have Buddha nature, the seed of Buddha. That's the seed of enlightenment. So therefore, there is no reason to believe some sentient being cannot become Buddha. So like that.
I know that there are supposed to be preserved footprints of the Buddha, which are kept in one of the sacred places in India or Nepal. And, you know, you can stand in them. And if you stand in them, maybe you realize, 10 toes, me too.
There is a story of a Brahmin who one day found the Buddha under a tree, calmly meditating. The Buddha's mind was still. He radiated such power and strength that the Brahmin was reminded of a tusker elephant. The Brahmin asked him who he was. Imagine a lotus that had begun life underwater, the Buddha replied. But grew and rose above the surface until it stood free. So I too have transcended the world and attained the supreme enlightenment. Who are you then? The Brahmin wondered. Remember me, the Buddha said, as the one who woke up.